Welcome to this presentation on communicating for results. I'm David Gazek, and I work with leaders and managers to create exceptional teams, partnerships, and organizations. This is a practical guide for anyone who strives to be a more effective communicator in any profession or industry, to help work through and avoid those conversations that don't go well and seem counterproductive, where you feel disconnected and frustrated, stuck and unable to make headway, or don't feel like you've been heard. In this presentation, you will gain a better understanding of why that happens and what you can do to turn things around through active listening and empathy, and by engaging in a learning conversation where you ask questions that deepen and broaden your learning, balance advocacy and inquiry, drill down your ladder of inference, and examine your left-hand column. All of which is drawn from my experience in the workplace and the teachings of these thought leaders in organizational development. The premise of this presentation is that getting communication right at all levels, whether it be between individuals, teams, business units, or across organizations, is critical to our ability or inability to collaborate, transform, and change, and that our success as communicators is directly linked to our efforts to build common ground, a prerequisite to progress and sustained results. We know that when communication is difficult, it adds time and cost, affects relationships and morale, and hinders our capacity to move forward and make a difference. Struggle with communication often occurs because we get locked in a battle of wills, which inevitably leads to a state of paralysis. In this presentation, we will first contrast these two approaches to communicating, and second, we will identify principles and tools that you can use to build common ground, be a more effective communicator, and improve your ability to collaborate, transform, and change. We risk falling into a state of paralysis when we use conversation to stake out our position and then dig in our heels like we're protecting our turf. When that happens, communication is one way. It's about advocating for what we think, arguing why the other person is wrong, and putting up a cone of defense that blinds us to new ideas and possibilities. We're more interested in making our case than in listening to and learning from each other. The conversation looks and feels like a battle of wills. It's closed-minded and combative. Each side is thinking, "This is the way it should be. You're the problem." Or, "I'll do it my way no matter what." And someone probably sounds like the devil's advocate. "Yeah, but it'll never. Why waste your time?" The conversation ends where it started, with no hope of collaboration, transformation, or change, because there's no room for it. In order to move from paralysis to progress, we need to shift our focus from inward and around preconceived positions to outward and engaged in understanding the other person, what they're thinking, and the triggers that shape their position. This understanding comes through inquiry balanced with advocacy. When we achieve this equilibrium, we're in a learning conversation, and we have the opportunity to build common ground. The starting point for a learning conversation is active listening and empathy. Active listening is listening to the other person for the sole purpose of understanding what they have to say, without second-guessing or rebutting. It may involve asking clarifying questions and summarizing back what you heard to make sure you got it right. The more we understand what the other person is trying to tell us from the start, the more useful we can be as a leader, manager, and team player. Active listening also sends a signal to the other person that we respect them, their time, and what they have to say. We build upon that respect and expand our common references when we show empathy for each other's struggles and concerns by acknowledging and relating to them. Active listening and empathy are the foundation for a learning conversation. If we downplay, shortchange, or ignore these fundamentals because we anticipate what someone's going to say, we think we already have the answer, we're impatient or we're uncomfortable, we risk compromising and limiting the outcomes in our relationships. A learning conversation is fluid and balanced. There's a natural shift back and forth because each party is open-minded and inclusive. Each states their point of view, explains it, and wants to learn from the other. We use inquiry to deepen our learning. Help me understand why, or what leads you to think that? What prevents you from? What are your concerns or fears? What would make you feel more comfortable? And what am I doing or saying to contribute to the problem? We also use inquiry to broaden our learning. What do you think? What did I miss, and is there another way to look at this? What questions do you have, and what would you like to add? We achieve balance between advocacy and inquiry by deepening and broadening our learning. Conditions for a learning conversation are optimum when advocacy and inquiry are high. That's when each person explains their thinking, gives examples, and is open to questions and other points of view. Too many questions, however, can lead to overanalyzing and overprocessing. When advocacy and inquiry are low, both parties are in an observing mode. A spike up either way can lead the other party to abdicate. When one person tries to persuade another, advocacy is high and inquiry is low. If that's the whole conversation, it can become imposing, especially when the person trying to persuade doesn't explain their thinking or give examples to support their views. When our focus is on asking questions, inquiry is high and advocacy is low. But too many questions can feel like an interrogation, where the intent is to seek a confirming view, ask leading questions, and discourage other ideas. The goal is to strive for an energetic balance between advocacy and inquiry. That's what sets the stage for a learning conversation. A key tool in this process is the ladder of inference, created by Chris Argyris and expanded upon by Peter Senge to map how we arrive at our point of view. The first step in the ladder is the observable data that we see and experience in real time, as if it was recorded on a video camera. Our climb continues when we selectively take in information from what we observe. We give that data meaning and make assumptions. We use those assumptions to draw conclusions, and they become the basis of our beliefs, which we express through our actions and decisions. Each step in the ladder is a building block in the formation of our judgments. Part of a learning conversation is to be willing to retrace our steps and descend down the ladder of inference, to examine how we formed our point of view, and what triggers how we think and feel, especially when it differs from others or we aren't getting the results we want. Are we only paying attention to the data that supports our beliefs, and is it leading us to make bad judgments and miss opportunities? Could our actions unintentionally be creating and perpetuating outcomes and behaviors that are undesirable? We can use the ladder of inference to identify these traps and better understand the origin of our differences, so we can find new ways to build common ground. Another tool for a learning conversation is the left-hand column, also developed by Chris Argyris, and one that I refer to as learning from your Annie Hall. Imagine a difficult conversation. On the right side of the page, write down what each person said. On the left, write down what you were thinking and feeling as each of you was speaking. You'll probably discover that you had two different conversations, one spoken, the other in your head, like Woody Allen depicted in the movie Annie Hall. While we wouldn't always voice everything in our heads, we feel stuck when the things we feel strongly about don't get said. Here are a few questions you can ask yourself about your left-hand column to help you achieve better results. What really led me to think or feel this way, and what assumptions did I make about the other person? What was my intention versus the outcome, and what did I say or do that led to that outcome? How did my thoughts and feelings affect my actions? Why didn't I say what I was thinking, and what do I think would have happened if I did? What could I have said in order to tap into the other person's left-hand column? Considering these questions after or during a conversation is likely to lead to a positive change in behavior and results. And the results of a learning conversation are enormous. We increase the potential for new ways of thinking and collaborating that lead to smarter solutions and better outcomes. We engage in individual learning, which helps to create a learning organization and a culture of learning, all of which makes its way to the bottom line in the form of higher performance and greater sustainability. To summarize, there are two key principles to keep in mind when communicating for results. First, engage in active listening and empathy, where you focus on understanding what the other person is telling you for its own sake. You ask clarifying questions and let the other person know what you heard. And you demonstrate empathy by acknowledging and relating to their struggles and concerns. Second, make important meetings and interactions a learning conversation, where your goal is to ask questions that deepen and broaden your learning, and balance advocacy and inquiry by probing each other's ladders of inference and examining and engaging in your left-hand column. If you practice these principles and use these tools as your guide, you will be a more effective communicator and significantly improve your results. There are also a variety of other exercises that can help you and those in your organization to become more effective communicators. Assess problematic relationships between key individuals, their strengths and weaknesses, and the pressures they face. Map unproductive communication patterns to understand how each person acts and reacts. Design experiments that disrupt old patterns and open up the door to new ones. Revisit past events and experiences that shape responses to current circumstances, and examine how the past gets in the way of personal development and relationships. Identify how the individual, their circumstances, and relationships have changed from the past, and what perspectives, beliefs, and strategies are more appropriate today. And create a change management program to practice and cement new perspectives and behaviors. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this presentation. Please contact me if you'd like to discuss communication issues in your organization or design a process to help make your leaders and managers more effective communicators and collaborators.